Greetings, bird people of Earth. It's time for Out There with the Birds, the podcast that's magically delicious, with your hosts, Ben Lizdas and Bill Thompson III. Out There with the Birds is supported by Koa Sport Optics, makers of the legendary 883 Prominar spotting scope. Visit sportingoptics.koa-usa.com to learn more. Out There with the Birds is also supported by the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Come birding with us in our favorite places. Learn more at birdwatchersdigest.com/rr. And now, here they are, Bill and Ben.
Ben Lizdas, welcome back to Ohio, southeastern Ohio. We're sitting outside on kind of a gray flannel sky day here in rural Washington County, Liberty Township. And we've had quite an eventful week, and you've had quite an eventful month.
Yeah, it's great being here. It's kind of like the steely sky. Oh, Cooper's hawk, right up there. Yeah, that really sent the waxwings scattering. But hearing the calls of the waxwings as they're kind of going gray across that sky. Look at all those blackbirds going right up there. Yeah. Anyways, it's a nice time of year to drop down for a visit in Ohio. Although I'm actually technically on this trip coming up to a visit from Ohio because I was just on the.
Where you been?
The birding festival circuit. I was at the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival, an event I missed last year, but I've been going to for, I want to say every year almost for 15 years. It was so great to be back there, get a chance to bird some of the familiar places and the birding hotspots there and see so many familiar faces. I want to give a shout out to all of our podcast listeners who I ran into who just said, hey, I listen to your podcast, love it, you're doing a great job, look forward to every other week. So you guys motivate us to do this kind of thing. So thanks for stopping by and saying hi, whether I was on a field trip with you or you stopped by the Birdwatchers Digest booth at the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival.
I told you, you're going to be a star.
But I was, and one thing that was different about this birding festival, this year's Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival, is I had a chance to lead field trips every day. I was on trips, which was great. It was a good chance to, meet and hang out with a lot of our subscribers, podcast listeners, just like-minded bird watchers. And it also, though, didn't give me the flexibility I usually have for chasing rarities here or there as they might crop up during the Rio Grande Valley Festival. As you know, right down on the Texas-Mexico border, and that's just a zone where rarities pop up.
Right. It's the northern boundary of the tropical zone.
Exactly. And the bird of the festival this year in terms of rarities, we've had Amazon kingfishers there before. This year's bird was the Tamaulipas crows. And I say crows, there were a number of them being seen at the Brownsville dump. And I didn't get a chance to go. I was leading trips every morning, at the booth every afternoon because I'm a hardworking guy that way, and missed out on this bird, though the field trip van that I ended up returning to the airport at the end of the festival, you could tell it had been to the Brownsville dump. That dump mud was in there. So I kind of got to go there by proxy, just not see the bird. But let me tell you, you just open that van door and someone's been to Brownsville.
Okay, we're just going to leave that right where it is. It does remind me of an April Fool's video I saw one time. But we don't have time to talk about that. So what was you missed the Tamaulipas crow. What was the best bird that you did see, would you say? Or what were some of the birding highlights? And then I understand there was one other miss, too.
There was. Well, first, just a word about the Tamaulipas crow. It was, like any birding festival, you go down to the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival and you get a good cross-section of bird watchers, right? From veterans who have seen all the birds down there and are just going down there to get more of it, to newbies who might have Tamaulipas crow on their life list, but not ruby-crowned kinglet. I had one of those on one of my field trips, one of those types of folks. And I think especially for some of these beginning birders or those people who aren't as familiar with birding, the idea of we're going to go spend an afternoon at a dump or a landfill. It kind of catches them off guard. You don't think you think of the jewels of the Rio Grande Valley and Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge, Laguna Atascosa, beautiful natural areas. And then, of course, the most sought after bird is at the Brownsville dump. So it's always interesting to kind of look at dumps as one of those birding hotspots. But, I suppose you get all the waste food there, corvids, gulls. It's there,
That's my dump in a bag. So the Tamaulipas crow is a sought-after bird because it's rare, because it just barely comes across the border. And for years, it's been not seen. It was a fairly regular kind of a lock for all the tours that would go down there during the festivals at the Brownsville dump, but then disappeared. Nobody knows why. I know around here in the Midwest, corvids suffered mightily when West Nile came through. They really got hammered. Our crow population went down to almost nothing, and to the point where it was a rare thing to see a crow. Now the numbers are back up, but
I can hear some in the distance.
right now. I wonder if that's what happened to that particular crow.
That makes sense. And there were numbers of them. I don't know at any given point, 4 or 5 being seen at a time down there. So I don't know. I have half a mind to go back and try to get that bird while I can. It's one of those life birds that was so close yet just couldn't make it happen.
I saw it many years ago, but it's like a smaller version of the American crow. Mm-hmm. Tends to like the dump, like a lot of birds do. There were quite a few birds there anyway, because it's a big messy place. It's got a lot of easy pickings for food for gulls and things like that. So what else did you do down at RGV?
So the highlights, I went on a number of field trips, a place called Cactus Creek Ranch. That was lovely. I got a chance to bird with John Dunn, who is really, super knowledgeable. Of course, I don't know if what is the editor for the National Geographic Guide to Birds, or
well, he was one of the original authors, along with Rick Blom.
So always full of knowledge and insight. So birding with him is fully engaging. Went to the King Ranch, and you probably saw maybe my bird of the trip, which was the zone-tailed hawk. And and this is a bird that mimics turkey vultures, and really will blend right in with the turkey vultures. And after you've seen 24 turkey vultures on the day, you just kind of stop looking at them. Fortunately,
which is the strategy of the zone-tailed hawk.
Exactly. So fortunately, someone on our trip, I think it was one of the participants, didn't stop looking at them, maybe because they hadn't seen all the turkey vultures of the day. Who knows? But pointed out that one's different. Look, its head's different. It's got stripes on its tail. No trailing white on the wings. It was like, okay, we got a zone-tailed hawk here. So that was a great bird. I don't see those except for down in the Rio Grande Valley. Southeast Arizona would be another spot to get them. So that was a great bird to see. The interesting thing about going to the King Ranch this year is that the trip I was on didn't hear or see the fruginous pygmy owls. And this is a bird that has so consistently been seen there to the point where birders take it for granted. I'm just going to go there and we're going to see this bird. Right. And it's a wonderful reminder that take nothing for granted when you're birding out in the field. And it's true, as field trip leaders, you never pass up getting looks at a common bird for the first time on a trip, because it's common, but you can't assume, oh yeah, we're going to see that bird throughout the day.
Well, you also can't assume that it's common for everybody. I mean, we had a rendezvous here a few years ago where a woman from the West, from Washington State, was just dying to see a cardinal. She actually got Swainson's warbler and cerulean warbler on her life list before she got northern cardinal. So, what's rare to you might not be rare to somebody else. What's common to you, and so on.
But, getting back to the pygmy owl, our friend Tom Langscheid, who's the head naturalist, tour leader at the King Ranch, takes a lot of pride in showing people this bird. One of the few places you can consistently see this bird in the States. And I think he was having a hard time kind of not being able to show these people his birds. But, once again, I think if birds were a lock all the time, where, you go just see them, you might as well be going to the zoo. I think part of the attraction of birding is the hit or miss aspect of it. It gives them, something new on the day. You just don't know what you're going to see or potentially what you're going to miss. So missing out on the fruginous pygmy owl, I think it was, on the whole, not a bad thing, because it's just that reminder to everyone, these are wild animals we're dealing with. They're on their own time. They're not ours to toy around with. We're just observers.
Yeah, I remember being down there for our reader rendezvous with Tom. Showed us, we got the fruginous pygmy owls pretty much right there the first morning in the sort of the courtyard of where some of the ranch staff lived. And they are tiny, so they're hard to find. You can hear them, but they're little tiny things that zip from place to place. They like to stay kind of hidden. And so it's not easy, even when you can hear them. It took us a while to find them. But boy, was I glad we did with the 50 people we had along.
Yes, there was a lot of anticipation for that bird. But I'm sure those folks that missed the bird on that trip, a good number of them will probably head back there. It is consistently probably one of the best places, if not the best place in the U.S. to see that bird. But the King Ranch offers so many other great birding opportunities. It's not just about those birds, really. That's where we saw the zone-tailed hawk, Sprague's pipits, tropical parula. Not really the right time of year for us to see them there in November, but it's fantastic birding. It's always great to go out birding with Tom and his crew at the King Ranch. So, easy come, easy go on the Frugianus pygmaeal.
And that's birding for you. You got to be easy come, easy go about it, because sometimes, like I remember years ago, being out in New Mexico with a friend, and I just wanted to find a roadrunner because the scout had never seen one, and we looked and looked and looked, and the harder we tried, the more fleeting it seemed to be. There's some birds that you just have to wait for them to come to you.
Roadrunner is one of those birds. You don't go finding roadrunners. I mean, the way that they are distributed in their habitat, they don't have kind of happy hunting grounds. They don't move around in flocks like some of these other birds. So that was, and we happened to come across one of those in the King Ranch, but that's definitely never a guarantee. I guess they must not be terribly territorial, or is it just that their territory is bigger?
I don't really know, but I just think, they're just kind of one of those ghost birds.
Montezuma quail. That's a nemesis bird for me. I've gone looking for that bird many times in southeast Arizona, and of course, whenever you go looking for it, it's like roadrunner, you can't find it. It's a bird you come across. The bird finds you. I don't know why some birds are that way and some aren't, but once again, it adds a little bit of flavor to the being out there and diving into the unknown any given morning.
Be the bird, Ben. Be the bird. So this week you've been down here for the entire work week, really, and getting ready to run you back to the airport so you can fly home. We were shooting some videos this week with our friends Brandon and Stephanie, and interesting how here we are just chatting back and forth, sitting out in the yard with the microphone, and it's a little bit less natural when you're doing a video. You have to be a little bit more on and careful about stuff. Like, we could be sitting here in our boxers right now and nobody would know because we're just recording, but you can't do that with video.
You can't do that with video. No. Yeah. It's nice to, I love recording podcasts because we can just kind of submerge ourselves in an area, and it's much more low tech. And you can really just get down to the conversation of it all and not have to worry about lights and camera action, all that sort of, all the glitz and the glamour.
Although I did love using the what do they call it, the action click, the cue card, not the cue card thing, but the the little thing that they snap at the beginning to. I love that. I would love to have that job. I want one of those for Christmas.
So next in the birding festival circuit is the Festival of the Cranes in New Mexico is happening right now. Missing that this year. Beautiful place to go birding. I mean, in New Mexico is one of those places where this time of year, especially, the light is gorgeous. It's one of those places that's just physically enchanting to be. But we have coming up our annual trek to Titusville for the Space Coast Birding and Wildlife Festival.
But before that, I'm going to be going to Cleveland to rock out at the Rock and Roll Reader Rendezvous, at the end of November.
Yeah.
So I might have to do a remote podcast without you there. You're not going to be there with me, which I'm sad about.
Special Bill Thompson edition of Out There with the Birds.
Right. 100% Bill all the time. We had the 100% Ben one from Coast. It's only fair. And did you get the letter my agent wrote you?
The cease and desist.
Yeah, man. I still want to be paid handsomely for that episode, even though I had nothing to do with it.
So, and I think last year when we did, we recorded, I remember recording a episode of Out There with the Birds right after the Space Coast Birding Festival.
Right.
And that was, I think, one of our first episodes that we did.
No, was that last year?
Yeah, it was last year. Maybe I think it was our first one on the road from a birding festival together. But Space Coast is going to be a lot of fun because, well, a couple things. One, we get a chance to it's another one of those festivals that's quite big, where a lot of people who you and I have come to know over the years, both in the industry and just you know, fellow birding enthusiasts and participants of the festival, we get a chance to see them again.
Right.
Always kind of a nice homecoming when you go to a big festival like that. Second, speaking of rock and roll, there's a band that's going to be playing there that you might be familiar with.
The Rain Crows.
Yes, something, and no West Nile is going to take down those Rain Crows.
No, we're smuggling ourselves across state lines, and I'm probably going to drive a van down with our gear, but which will be interesting. I haven't done that drive since I was a kid when I wasn't driving. So, yeah, we're going to play. We're playing on Saturday night to kind of sew up the end of the festival, and it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I've played music down there, you know, for programs and also talks and a little bit, you know, at social time a couple times, but it'll be nice to actually have the full band there playing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we're received. We have played out of Ohio before. We've played in West Virginia. We've played, you know, a few other places, but this is going to be the farthest afield we've gone. And from there, I'm thinking I might try to just book some gigs in Cuba, and then just keep going.
Just go all Cuba, hit the Caribbean, hit Central America, and just go all the way down. Next thing you know, you'll be in Tierra del Fuego,
Right.
playing.
En Fuego.
That's right. But after the Space Coast, we're not going home.
No,
We're not going home. We're staying down there for our Reader Rendezvous. Is it what's the
Birding Basics and Beyond.
Birding Basics and Beyond is the theme, and that is going to be something that will be a lot of fun. So we are having a bunch of friends come on down, go birding with us. I think as of now, I think we still got some spots left. So if you want to come birding,
A handful of them.
if you want to come birding with us around Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, Titusville, Vieira Wetlands, I mean,
Orlando Wetlands, Hal Scott.
oh, the birding is going to be fantastic. We are also going to have some real great components to this Reader Rendezvous that will have, you know, skill building workshops. For the first time at a rendezvous, I think, at least since I've been participating, we have an artist on board who's going to be going through field sketching techniques. And it's not just any artist, but Catherine Hamilton, who you interviewed for your This Birding Life podcast not too long ago. And she's got incredibly talented. I mean, I'm not expecting to be able to draw like her by the end of the Reader Rendezvous, but if my sketching skills don't improve, I'll be disappointed in myself.
Well, you know, when we do this podcast, when we do the next podcast episode after Space Coast, I'm going to put some of those sketches of yours up on the screen when this podcast launches. Okay, so people can see just how talented a young fella you are. Yeah,
I will have, if my sketches go up on the podcast, and if they're any good, I'm going to give all the credit to Catherine.
And you can auction them off for bird conservation.
Yes, but so if you want to come and join us and really get some good sketching tips from a true pro, not a hack like me, consider joining us, assuming we've still got space left.
Yeah, we'll still have some space, I think. And you know, the other cool thing about that is the birding down there in Florida. It's flat, so it's easy walking. It's, you hope, kind of warm, and it's going to be the first week of February, and the birds are big and glamorous and fairly easy to spot. And because it's Florida and we're birding places that get lots of traffic, both from birders and just tourists and people, the birds aren't quite as skittish, it seems. So it's a great place, as you said, to concentrate on field sketching. It's a great place for photography. And what I'll be doing is instructing people on improving their birding skills. That's why we call it Birding Basics and Beyond. So we'll do everything from cleaning and focusing your binocular to getting on the bird, some field craft stuff like how to get the light in your favor, how to work through bird identification, out from the bill and the top of the head and work your way down and back. It's really fun. I enjoy that so much because people seem to appreciate it. Even folks who've been birding for a long time, it's great to be reminded of some of the stuff that, maybe you've forgotten or maybe you never quite absorbed. It matters. If you want to maximize your enjoyment in birding, you need to enjoy the process of it. And for most of us, that's identifying birds. And you want to let go of all that frustration and just move blissfully through the process of identifying and enjoying and watching the birds. And that's what we'll be doing a lot of down there at the Birding Basics and Beyond Reader Rendezvous?
I think the only thing that is more fun than sharpening your birding skills is doing so with a bunch of friends in a really fun environment where, you're not. Everyone's enjoying the process of really kind of going through the motions of that. I was on one of the field trips I was just at in the Rio Grande Valley. We had a little mixed flock moving in that had white-eyed vireo, blue-headed vireo, and a whole host of warblers. Nashville warbler, orange-crowned, of course, and was down there. And I was asking people, and had to kind of pull back as we're calling out birds in this flock. Does everyone know how to tell the difference between a vireo and a warbler? And there were a number of people who just no. And sometimes you have to remind yourself, you have to kind of, those learning opportunities are out there for lots of birders who maybe have been birding for a while, but really haven't had someone say, well, look at the way the head is shaped. Vireos move around a bit slower. Look at the bill. The bill is really diagnostic. And, but they're birds that hang out together, that are about the same size and generally shaped together. And I think there's a lot of birders who are just like, you can't take for granted that all the people you're birding with know all these little things that you take for granted. There's that knowledge base that we've gotten over years of doing this stuff.
Speaking of taking, that's a good point, Ben.
Yeah. Are you going to see gannets in Florida?
Yeah, I think so.
I hope so. I love gannets.
You don't get a lot of gannets in Wisconsin.
We don't get nearly enough gannets in Wisconsin. In fact, I don't get any gannets in Wisconsin. Okay. I want to see gannets down there. That's going to be my target bird down there, gannet.
Okay. Well, speaking of taking things for granted, taking things for gannet. We need to hit the road because you're going to fly out of here, and we got a 2-hour drive to the airport. So say goodbye to everybody, Ben.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay, good night, John Boy and Mary Elizabeth. This is Bill Thompson III and Ben Lizdas the First for Out There with the Birds, and we'll see you guys out there with the birds.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Out There with the Birds. Special thanks to Koa, our optics sponsor. Learn more about their fine line of birding products at sportingoptics.koa-usa.com. We're also supported by the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Your next birding adventure starts at birdwatchersdigest.com/rr. Tune in next time for some more noise from the boys, Bill and Ben. Until then, keep your feeders filled and your gardens tilled, and we'll see you out there with the birds. Bye for now.